God damn it.
Ah, I just dropped myself. What kind of fucked up world is this? Ah!
Well, hello there. I am Chebetha, and I am here to give my simple-minded perspective on Deathloop. Deathloop is a game made by Arcane Studios and is set inside of a 70s retro-futuristic time loop. In Deathloop, you play as a man named Colt Vaughn, who is an amnesiac stuck inside of a time loop. His only real goal is to break out of this time loop, and while there is only one linear way to complete that goal, there are a plethora of different ways you can go about it. Without giving out any spoilers, Colt finds a document that lays out his means of escape. To break the time loop, Colt must kill the 9 people directly tied to starting this time loop in the first place, including himself. Fortunately for Colt, it's going to require a lot more finesse, as he must kill all the visionaries in one day, as at the end of the day restarts. This is called a loop. But well, I would like to talk about how you even go about killing those visionaries.
You call that breaking my spine? You red team ladies wouldn't know how to break a spider. My spine!
When you start as Colt, he's fighting off a crazy machete-wielding woman. Her name is Juliana, and she is one of the visionaries. She seems to spend her days hunting you down. She also seems very upset that Colt can't remember and kills him, which loops him, meaning that he restarts the day. Now, Colt's memory picks back up again, and he will remember everything from this point on, and thus begins the tutorial. You know, shoot the thing, learn the thingamajig. It's actually almost that exact thing. It's just the hackamajig instead. I mean, I guess. Either way, Colt uses it to hack enemy turrets and sensor alarms. The turrets become a turncoat, while the sensors are made just entirely useless. Other than a key thing I'm going to talk about here soon, it's a pretty standard stealth first-person shooter. This tutorial will have a long length, so I certainly see some people dropping the game because of it. Unfortunately, the tutorial was a necessary evil, mainly because of a reason I will again get to later. Colt gets leads to figure out the repeating daily lives of the visionaries, as their memory resets each day. The only 2 exceptions to this being Colt and Juliana. Among visionary leads, which are pretty self-explanatory, there are arsenal leads to get Colt access to sick-ass weapons. Once the basics are down, Colt is free to explore the 4 areas of the loop: Updom, Carl's Bay, Fristed Rock, and the Complex. Your first goal is to figure out how to save your items from loop to loop. This not only gives Colt an opportunity to kill his first visionary, but it also gives him the opportunity to complete an arsenal lead. To do this, you go to the Complex in the evening. During this time, one of the visionaries named Wenji is at the complex and can be killed. There's only one thing stopping Colt: Juliana. When there's a visionary around, Juliana starts a hunt and prevents Colt from using the tunnels he uses to get around the island. He either has to be killed, or Colt has to deactivate the antenna she uses with the hackamajig. Upon killing Juliana, Colt is rewarded with a slab. Slabs are items that give unique powers to Colt and vary from slab to slab. Colt's slab gives him the ability to die 3 times before looping, and it's called Reprise. Juliana will always drop a slab, but it's random. Most visionaries have a slab, with the sole exception seeming to be Wenji, which is pretty ironic since she kind of made them. Nevertheless, you press on after dealing with Juliana and move on to dealing with Wenji. Upon killing Wenji and running her experiment, which involves Colt looping himself, bang! Now you can infuse items and take them from loop to loop. Finally, you are now free to explore Black Reef and may now follow any of the leads however you please. This game allows you to customize a loadout in which you can bring with a great amount of freedom in how you build Colt. My first build was something of an absolute unit. A melee machine who could simply run into enemies, melee them, and then heal. God, that was so much fun. After that, I decided on trying more of a selective, stealthy option. It was using a legendary sniper that I received from one of the arsenal leads. It also used a gun which shot spikes and spotted enemies, so that I would constantly know where they were. I had other builds that were simply built to take punishment and spit lead like no other. I would use this semi-auto shotgun that was, put simply, the best gun in the game by far. I also use an LMG type gun that spewed lead. There's a good amount of diversity in this game, not only with the guns but the trinkets as well. Trinkets are almost like perks that either grant buffs to stats or do something else entirely. For example, you can have one that makes enemy landmines take much longer to go off. You can make your own explosives highlight enemies rather than explode. There are a plethora of trinkets not only for personal use, but for your weapons use as well. For every weapon you pick up and for every trinket you get, there are tiers to them. It ranges from gray to blue to purple to gold, in that order from worst to best. Purple weapons have perks that can substantially help you, ranging from slowing enemies to simply making them explode once they die. This game just has so much you can do, so much weird random shit that you can just simply make up. There's a pistol that shoots out toxic gas that would normally damage you, but if you find a certain trinket, the gas will actually heal you, making it viable to hide in your own stink. My absolute unit build will just run everyone and everything over. My stealthy build will just mark everyone together with the Nexus slab, which makes whatever happens to one enemy happen to everybody else connected to the Nexus. So I'll hit the group with the Nexus and pop one dude and watch everybody just hit the floor. It just makes me think I can make just about anything viable. The variety makes this game fun, and it keeps it fairly fresh for me. Knowing what hazards maps will have will influence me to change my loadout. Harriet sits in Carl's Bay in the morning and proceeds to gas the followers in her cult. Well, better take the anti-stink perk and sniff the fumes. Oh man, Igor's gonna hide behind a bunch of mines? Maybe I'll take the slow fuse perk, or the one that turns mines against my enemies. I mean, oh my gosh, I haven't even mentioned all the specific slabs. You have the shift slab looted from Charlie, which is by far the most useful slab in the game. It is essentially a teleport, and it's almost the same one as
the older brother that shall not be named.
There's Harriet's Nexus slab I mentioned earlier that binds enemies together. The Havoc slab from Via that puts Colt into a frenzy, which is described as to turning him into a
paragon of violence,
increasing his damage to enemies and reducing the damage he takes. There's the Aether slab gained from Igor that turns Colt into an invisible sneaky boy. You have the Carnesis slab from Alexis that gives Colt a little taste of the Force. The either launches enemies back, into the air, or from side to side. The Fugue slab that was tossed away by Frank and picked up by Gabe the Garbage Collector, which fires a stunning, blinding, drunken projectile. Side note, this Gabe the Garbage Collector beat my ass, dude. I died like 4 times now. Fuck him. Colt's reprise I talked about earlier gives him an extra couple lives, that's only usable by Colt. Finally, you have the Masquerade slab, held exclusively by Juliana, which puts her into the state of a molest imposter and gives her a disguise. I didn't even know about the Fugue slab until I started doing research for this video. I never witnessed the beauty of Gabe the Chat until I realized he existed, again doing research for this video. Along with Reprise or Masquerade respectively, Colt can carry up to 2 separate slabs in his loadout, although most of the time it's really down to 1 because of the existence of Shift. Shift allows you to bypass so many things that it's just so universally useful. It never leaves my loadout. Even still, so much variety from the walking tank to the telekinetic smasher. The inhabitants of the island will eventually go from being a serious threat to little babies I can take candy from. Before playing the game, I always heard that you were simply unable to take on more than a couple of enemies at a time, as they'd really start to overwhelm you. At first I believed them, but after a number of hours I simply started curb stomping anything that came my way. Not a whole lot really threatened me. I went from Colt Bond, the pathetic captain, to
Agathor, destroyer of worlds.
This doesn't stop me from looping, however. I take the knowledge I gained from looping and apply it to what I'm doing, so that when I do loop, I can always say, well, I'm not going to make that stupid mistake again. This game forces me to learn from my mistakes, and not from things I feel are out of my control. Since the specific times of each day in the same area are the same, it's hard to make the same mistake twice, unless you're me, and you make the same mistake like a dozen times. Either way, the game is good at not feeling unfair, and with the build variety and repeating the same mission but doing it a different way, makes me feel like I'm absorbing knowledge and learning alongside Colt, rather than simply beating the linear game that it definitely is. The gameplay really feels clunky and stiff to start out the game, but you'll eventually get a feel for it, exactly like Colt does. You are Colt, experiencing the loop for what might as well be his first loop. Eventually, your shooting goes from sluggish to snappy, and your ability to adapt under pressure gets better. The game has a good way of making me feel like I've turned into a surprisingly efficient killer, and everything is a piece of the puzzle. I just enjoy making a build and taking down a visionary. It's very satisfying to me. The gameplay gives you the freedom and tools to take the things down in a variety of ways. In one mission in particular, you have to kill a visionary named Alexis Dorsey, a young, narcissistic billionaire who came up as a financial backer and is hosting a party celebrating what he thinks is the first loop, because he can't remember. Problem is, everyone has a wolf mask, making it difficult to distinguish between everyone. To solve this problem, there are a number of things you can do. You can simply kill everyone, but honestly that one is not as easy as it seems. You can turn off the tap to Alexis's favorite beer, and he'll come to investigate what happened. There's a statue of him that you can maim to draw his attention, and you can also play his favorite music, and he will come around and start boogieing. Schmooving, really. Like I said, freedom and tools to take down the game. That in combination with the art style and audio of this game make it an enjoyable experience to explore in. Incidentally,
Da 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 da. Come sing with me. Da 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 da.
the visuals of Deathloop are amazing to me. This jiggy 70s island. Most of the places on this island are either themed to look oddly like some sort of nightclub, a lab of some kind, or some kind of World War II style area. The nightclub areas make sense, as some of the visionaries, such as Alexis or Frank, seem to want to party in the loop. You got your scientists, Wenji and Igor, so obviously they need their sciencey stuff to science with. As for the bunkers and the other older buildings, those come from the last time that there was a time loop on this island. That's right, this isn't the first time the Isle of Black Reef has experienced a loop. Hold on, I gotta explain this real quick. Current time loop started in 1963, but previously our own Colt Vaughn was part of an experiment called Operation Horizon. The point of it was to investigate and document the anomaly. Colt was stationed on this island after getting the hots for a woman named Lila. This ended up resulting in him getting a demotion because of their relationship. He felt like he needed to get back to his former glory, so he piloted a ship into the anomaly. Not like a boat, no. An actual, rocket ship. Sick as hell. Anyways, the ship malfunctions or something and Colt gets stuck in a time loop for the next 17 years, leaving his significant other alone. Colt eventually went insane and chose to loop himself, if you catch my drift. This, funnily enough, broke the loop and he crashed, which is how I assume he looped himself in the first place. After this, he was put in an insane asylum and eventually found by Igor Serling. They went on to found the Aeon program and would get a bunch of people together to start another time loop, although Colt only did this to get back to his lover. Anyways, after that tangent, I'm gonna get back to the visuals. Gosh, dude, the designs in this game are so goddamn great. Colt has this clear former pilot design with the design of his almost bomber-style jacket, and all the writing on him makes it clear that he's insane. Seems obvious to me that this isn't even the first time he's forgotten. Juliana looks like a young, sexy 70s librarian, which makes sense as she's the group's archivist. She spent the last seemingly lifetime recording and learning things. Alexis Dorsey wants to be seen as cool, so he wears an edgy wolf mask and a black jacket with a flicked up collar. And not one single person thinks it's cool. Hardly any of the other visionaries even want to be associated with him. I mean, come on, his username is literally AlphaWolf69. Cringe. Charlie Montague looks like he's a slimy game designer, but also someone who considers himself a genius. Someone who wants to look comfortable, but also look classy. Igor Serling looks like a fucking nerd who wants to seem cool at others, similar to Alexis. Similarly, nobody thinks he's cool at all, not even Alexis. Nobody takes him seriously. Fia Zaborowska, nice, has the mismatched look of an artist with the paint stuck on her face, and the over-the-top look as well. Extravagant and crazy. Frank Spicer looks like a jazz musician who's also a psycho mobster. Pretty fitting, honestly. He has a polo and a Hawaiian shirt under a slick blazer. Like what? Harriet Morris definitely looks the part of an absolute
Sacrifice me in the dark gods.
cult leader. She looks like she has her own cultist compound. Finally, Wendy Evans looks like a fucking nerd, but in a good way. She's really the only good scientist of the Visionaries. Someone who knows they're smart and dresses the part. I spit rhymes. Speaking of spitting rhymes, the music in this game is sublime. There is a standard motif that's in the main theme that's spread about in each of the Visionaries' themes. To me, it almost sounds like a spy escaping on a rocket, which is definitely influenced by what happens in the game. Each Visionary has their own spin on the main track, which is called Welcome to Black Reef. Colt's theme is Break the Loop, which is a more melancholy style version of the main theme. The Big Sad, while Juliana has Protect the Loop, which is a more heavenly version of the main theme, with a sort of choir-style vocals. Each Visionary has two distinct parts to their theme that I've heard described as Searching, which is the quieter build-up, as well as the combat part, which is self-explanatory. Alexis's Anonymous starts off as curious and builds to this bombastic reveal, and is my personal favorite track in the game. I also feel it is the jazziest of all the Visionary themes. Charlie's Space Invader is based on the physical game he put on the island, and sounds like a 60s alien theme mixed with a spy thriller track. Igor's Paranormal Activity has a similar sound to Space Invader, but is obviously more ghastly. It conveys the feeling that older movies and shows do that included a ghost of some sort would. Via's Delirium sounds exactly like what a game trying to portray your character tripping would sound like. I don't know, man, she just has my least favorite track by far. Frank's A Band Apart sounds like the most distinct out of all of Visionary's songs, as he was actually a musician. From what I can tell in the little research I did, I'm told it's some sort of pop, but I don't know, man. Either way, I'd say it sounds like some sort of song you'd hear in a bar. Harriet's Hazardous sounds as if you're stuck inside of an evil sermon, who again is preparing to sacrifice you to the dark gods. Yet somehow still manages to sound jazzy during the combat part of the song. At long last, Wenji's ubiquity sounds like an experiment about to turn into Frankenstein, until Frankenstein starts playing jazz, science jazz. All these themes in some sort of way have the main riff somewhere in it. There's also this theme called Final Confrontation. You know where it goes, and it combines Colt's dread with the heavenly feel of Juliana's theme while slowing it down to make it this somber confrontation. Speaking of somber confrontations, as much as I genuinely love the designs, music, and gameplay, I certainly do have problems with Deathloop.
Standing near the point does nothing. Get on the point, dumbcough.
Now you might be asking, Chep, when the hell are you going to get to the point of this video? I could have just seen a couple of the stellar reviews of this game and not been wasting my time watching this. Well, to this point I've tried to keep Deathloop's older brother out of my discussion, but unfortunately it will always be compared to it and suffer because of it. Deathloop is made by Arcane Studios, which is a game company which is most famous for making Dishonored, which is widely considered to be better than Deathloop, which I'm not denying. It just kind of sucks that this game that would be good in a vacuum is bad compared to his older siblings. This is why I say give a little pity to the younger brother. The expectations were very high for him to be successful, and to a point he was. But unfortunately his siblings were more successful than him, and he will always have that stigma. While critics gave Deathloop a near perfect score, many of the people that played Dishonored had beef with it. The problems they had were fair, and I'll give them that. But Deathloop is not a bad game. It seems that most of the people can't stand the hand-holding nature of Deathloop. I can agree, but I also fall into the same subset of gamers that caused the game to be this way. You see, Deathloop wasn't always having this constant death grip on your hand. Once upon a time, Deathloop was a game entirely based on freedom and giving players the satisfaction of dropping into a world and solving the puzzle. Unfortunately, the first set of players couldn't understand anything at all, really. They couldn't understand what they were doing, how to keep their gear, how to escape. Some of them couldn't even figure out that they were in a time loop at all. The game had little guidance, and they made a change and added some guidance, but it still wasn't enough. Changes had to be made to the game again, and some hand-holding was added to make it easier for people to understand. There's literally a document added to the game explaining how the loop works and how to break it called the LPP. Even that was still not enough. Changes were made again, and they added a guided tutorial. After that, changes to the UI was made to make things more clear, such as adding exit markers so you know when you're done. Eventually, the entire game had to be rearranged to make the entire game more palatable to your average player. The confusing moments of the game were all gone. Hardly any intrigue or eureka moments were left in the game at all. The game itself had to change to accommodate the lack of intuition by its players. It worked out for Arcane in the long run, but holy schmoly, man, some of these things could have been better. Deathloop is a 10 out of 10 concept with a 7 out of 10 execution. I love this game, but even I can't help but wonder. Like, you can't tell me there's this game with a retro-futuristic 70s aesthetic set in a time loop with espionage and spy versus spy undertones isn't a 10 out of 10 concept. I damn near shed a tear reading that aloud. I think that there were some things that this game was missing, such as an option for a classic mode, in which you play the original version of the game with little guidance at all. On top of that, it would have been cool to see some sort of modifier system for missions, that random effects would occasionally be applied in the area, because the anomaly is stable and blah blah blah. Like, could you imagine if there was a modifier that spliced two areas together for one of the missions? That would be wild. There could also be something that makes it to where your slabs only work inside of the areas they usually don't work instead, to flip the game on its head. I again spit rhymes. Maybe even a gas leak modifier that places gas throughout the map. I believe this would make the game less monotonous at times, because honestly, sometimes doing the exact same mission over again can be pretty boring. Also, as much as I don't mind the rarity system for trinkets and weapons, I also don't see it as necessary. A lot of players seem to really dislike it. As for how to change it, I don't have anything special in mind. Perhaps you could do the same with the slabs, where you acquire them over and over again, or you can just unify the weapons without a rarity, or using trinkets as upgrades that use the purple weapon perks. These changes would be cool to me personally, but the big thing for most people was the amount of hand-holding and guidance to the point where this game, seemingly designed for exploration, actually just lobotomizes you to just follow the arrow. It's to the point that some diehard fans of the game will tell you to just turn off most UI elements before starting the game to get a more intriguing game. And that's just unfortunate.
You've got to be better than all of us, so don't just try to shoot everything. But I like shooting things. You gotta be smart. It's the only way to fix this.
I harp on the game because I really do love the game. I know it's a 7 out of 10 hand-holdy, railroady, sacrifice me to the dark gods kind of game, but I loved it, and not a lot of games gave me that dopamine hit like finally getting the perfect loop did. For all this game's problems and crappy multiplayer experiences that I didn't fail to mention, just thought it was irrelevant, I had a great time with it and its weird characters, and I hope you did too, and I want to thank you for watching this video. Making a video on YouTube has been a dream of mine for a long time, and yes, I am a young 20-something with that dream as well. Leave me alone. But seriously, this genuinely means a lot to me, and I appreciate it. I wanted to thank a couple people, one person in specific. I wanted to thank TJ for starting his montages and finally, convincing me to actually make a video. It was a dream of mine for a long time, but he convinced me for sure. I do also want to thank those of you who just sat there and listened to me, because it really did help just to put my words out into the atmosphere, I guess. Thank you. But really, that's it though. You guys have a good one. Goodbye.